Hi everyone, today I want to talk to you about a new build that I just made on the Season 8 PTR revolving around some of those new boss powers that we're gonna get. So in Season 8 you can, similar to the witch powers, acquire certain new borrowed power effects coming from certain bosses. So there's like one from Lilith, one from Ashava, Dario, Duriel, and so on. And the one I'm actually building around here is the Ashava power, which is a huge like kind of poison wave that the boss normally shoots. You can see that coming out here sometimes. And well, it does a lot of damage actually. In fact, here with my Spiritborn, this is so far the strongest build I have played on this class on the PTR. And it looks quite promising to be a top contender. So here I'm kind of cruising through a Pit 100, which you have to remember is way harder now in Season 8. This is, I don't know how much harder, but something like the equivalent of like a Pit 130 or something on the current live server. So this is actually pretty top end here. And you see I'm crushing this right now with this build. So this can go way higher. This is not fully optimized. And I think we could see something like in the range of 110 plus with this build, which seems to be somewhat even with some of the other top clears that are here coming from other classes as well. Now, of course, there's a caveat. This is one of the new things and relatively likely to get nerfed, to be honest, because in general, it seems like the boss powers are somewhat overtuned. But even with a relatively significant nerf, I think this might remain one of the top builds here, depending on how much the numbers get shifted. But I think they could probably even cut off an entire 0 on the damage number, for example, and it would still be one of the best Spiritborn builds out there. So how does this build actually work? Well, this is a poison noxious resonance build. So the way that this usually works, for example, with Stinger or with the Andario's Spiritborn, you might have seen me talk about that. I made a video, for example, in Season 6 and in Season 7 about this. It has been a bit of a niche thing, but it works very similarly. In fact, I actually used the Andario's Spiritborn as the baseline to make this setup here. So we try to stack a lot of crit damage, which scales the Noxious Resonance key passive. And then we have this Ashava poison wave that applies the poison. And then when we start hitting the targets, they will explode from the Noxious Resonance explosions, basically. On top of this, I have Wushnak Pa actually in this setup. So we get the Jaguar Hall because we use the Hunter. And then every 15 hits, which we produce pretty frequently with the spamming Quill Volley, we get this extra Jaguar Hall proc that also does a huge amount of damage. And like this, we just have an insane damage output. So the more targets you fight, the more DPS you do, which means that also on the boss, it's not really that great. And at least for the highest tiers, you will need a boss that has ad spawns. But well, you can definitely make this happen and still take down, you know, these Pit 100 plus bosses here. If you want to play something kind of comparable to this, you can go to the Quill Volley endgame guide here on Maxwell, for example. You go to the variants. This is where I put the Andario's Visage build. And as I mentioned, this was the basis for what I've done on the PTR. But I've also made a planner for this already. You can find this here on my Discord as well. I have my Woody Builds channel, so you can go check that out. I started with the Season 8 planners here now, and this is the first one that I made. And I will also keep updating that as I go with other builds and what other stuff we're cooking. And I will link the planner directly down in the description as well. So this is what this looks like right now. It is built relatively tanky as well, so this can be made more greedy. And then you can probably go for a Perdition Helm, for example, instead of a Shaco. This is not really required, and you can have even more damage. So there's definitely ways to optimize this if you want to push to the absolute maximum. But yeah, this is a pretty powerful build in the end. There's also some other interesting changes that are coming in Season 8, which is, for example, that the Quax rune has been reworked. And the way this works now is that it just gives you a 1 second or 100% damage buff. And a lot of builds can actually use this much better than before now. Previously, this was mostly something for like the kind of snapshot builds, like Cataclysm, for example. They tried to proc this and then press Cataclysm, and then the entire Cataclysm for like 20 seconds was doubled in power. And this is no longer possible, but instead other builds like this one can actually use it now. So for example, I combined it with the Ahu rune with the lucky hit chance to get offering basically. And with a build like the Quill Volley, we have pretty high lucky hit chances. So we constantly proc this here. If you look at the buff here, this is the second rune here, and you see how fast it scales up every time. It's like 2 seconds or so per proc. So even on the boss fight where I don't have a lot of targets to produce lucky hits, I still have something like a 50% uptime on this thing or so, which is kind of wild. So this is like a very powerful rune not just for this build, but for many other builds. I think other classes are using this as well. So another thing to kind of keep in mind here. Either way, I just wanted to show off this build here real quick because I think this is actually a bit of a glimmer of hope here for the Spiritborn, which has been somewhere like middle of the pack and not really that crazy popular in Season 7 from what I can tell, because it didn't really have this insane power that, for example, Blood Wave and Cataclysm Druid and the Earthquake Barbs had or so. But it seems like Spiritborn are definitely catching up, especially because a lot of the other top tier builds were nerfed in Season 8. And this is a kind of interesting setup here. In the end, it does play fairly similar to like a traditional Quill Volley build. So if you like that from, playing it in Season 6, for example, you'll probably like this as well. But it does have a bit of a different flow with like, the insanely high AoE damage, because the more targets are hit, the more damage. And then kind of like a little bit weak on the bossing side. But again, you have to remember, this is like a pit 100 here. Like in Torment 4, I can like 100% one-shot like every single boss, for example. So this is not a problem at all with this build. And, even if you go like 10 tiers lower or so, these boss fights going to be like 30 seconds and that's it. So it's going to be fine just the way it is. And even with a potential nerf to those boss powers, it's going to be a good build, I think. But again, we'll have to see what the final patch notes will say. For now, I think this is just something that I wanted to share here and get out for people to try. I'll have more stuff coming. Also, I've been doing a lot of rogue testing, for example. I want to try out some of the other classes as well. There's like the new ice shot stuff I want to see, for example, maybe something with double swing on the barb. So I'm excited to try these kind of things. And for now, that's what I got here. So let me know what you think, or other builds that you want me to try, or some stuff that you've been cooking. So I'll check that out, and the PTR is still up for some more days, so there's a lot of stuff to test here. But this is what I got here for now. Hope you enjoyed my video, and I'll see you guys next time.